UK
NYT report quoting the US and Ukrainian officials suggests that Russia has assembled a force of 50,000 soldiers, including North Korean troops, in preparation for an assault aimed at reclaiming territory in the Kursk region, which was recently seized by Ukraine. Now, according to a new US assessment, this build-up comes without Russia having to withdraw their forces from Ukraine's east, allowing Moscow to maintain pressure on multiple fronts simultaneously. While Russian troops have been gradually recapturing some of the land lost to Ukraine in Kursk, missile strikes and artillery have yet to result in a major assault. However, Ukrainian officials anticipate an attack involving North Korean troops in the coming days, with the North Koreans currently training with Russian forces in the western part of Kursk. Sources indicate that more than 10,000 North Korean soldiers have been sent to fight in Kursk. These troops, equipped with Russian-provided weapons, including machine guns, sniper rifles and anti-tank missiles, are expected to operate in their own units while wearing Russian uniforms. This development comes shortly after Ukraine attacked Moscow on November 10th, with at least 34 drones, the biggest drone strike on the Russian capital since the very start of this war in 2022, forcing flights to be diverted from 3 of the city's major airports and injuring at least 1 person, as per reports. NYT report quoting the US and Ukrainian officials suggests that Russia has assembled a force of 50,000 soldiers, including North Korean troops, in preparation for an assault aimed at reclaiming territory in the Kursk region, which was recently seized by Ukraine. Now, according to a new US assessment, this build-up comes without Russia having to withdraw their forces from Ukraine's east, allowing Moscow to maintain pressure on multiple fronts simultaneously. While Russian troops have been gradually recapturing some of the land lost to Ukraine in Kursk, missile strikes and artillery have yet to result in a major assault. However, Ukrainian officials anticipate an attack involving North Korean troops in the coming days, with the North Koreans currently training with Russian forces in the western part of Kursk. Sources indicate that more than 10,000 North Korean soldiers have been sent to fight in Kursk. These troops, equipped with Russian-provided weapons, including machine guns, sniper rifles and anti-tank missiles, are expected to operate in their own units while wearing Russian uniforms. This development comes shortly after Ukraine attacked Moscow on November 10th, with at least 34 drones, the biggest drone strike on the Russian capital since the very start of this war in 2022, forcing flights to be diverted from 3 of the city's major airports and injuring at least 1 person, as per reports.
Точково прогнозируем погодно.
Новая надводная цель может попасть.
Скоростью 480 км в час.
Подразделению АТД боеготовность номер 1.
Вариант ПВО номер 3. Второй боевой смене заступить.
Well, I've just come from a meeting with President Zelensky, and that's my 6th
time of meeting him since I've been Prime Minister, sixth time I've had to sit down with him and discuss the situation. It was an opportunity for me to repeat and affirm our ironclad support of Ukraine.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. It has to end at some point. It has to end. He's gone through hell, and his country has gone through hell like few countries have ever, like it's happened anywhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's a terrible situation. And I will say I have had a great relationship, and I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin, and I think we can work out something that's good for both sides.
North Korean state media says Pyongyang has officially ratified its Mutual Defense Pact with Russia. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin signed the agreement in June. Kim has now reportedly signed the decree ratifying that deal, one day after Putin did the same. The treaty says North Korea and Russia will support each other by all available means if attacked. Experts say Putin will use this pact to justify the deployment of North Korean troops in its war in Ukraine.
Korea's intel agency has a similar assessment. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-soo reports.
The U.S. State Department says North Korean soldiers are now fighting alongside Russian forces against Ukraine. Principal Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel confirmed Tuesday local time that over 10,000 North Korean troops have been sent to Russia, with most stationed in the contested Kursk region. Patel noted that Russia faces challenges in working with these forces, including interoperability and language barriers. However, experts in South Korea suggest that may not be a significant issue.
Because the front line is so wide, North Korean troops can be used wherever they're needed, either as a kind of vanguard or even as cannon fodder in frontline positions. So the language barrier likely won't be a significant issue.
Professor Zhang also explained the motivation behind Russia's all-out efforts in the Kursk region.
Essentially, they want to prevent any loss of their own territory while quickly neutralizing risks. Their goal is to secure more of the 20% of land they occupy without losing any of their existing territory.
The Russian and North Korean forces' offensive in Kursk appears to be accelerating in line with the re-election of President-elect Donald Trump, who has been promising to put an early end to the war in Ukraine. This has sparked concerns across Europe, with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte raising the alarm on Tuesday.
Russia working together with North Korea, Iran and China is not only threatening Europe, it threatens peace and security, yes, here in Europe, but also in the Indo-Pacific and in North America. We need to raise the cost for Putin and is enabling authoritarian friends by providing Ukraine with the support it needs to change the trajectory of the conflict.
Experts say Europe may be concerned as the U.S. could weaken its commitment to European defense, especially with the return of Trump.
If you look at the new nominee for the U.S. Secretary of Defense, who has been advocating for cuts to overseas troops, a reduction in Ukraine support could signal a shift in U.S. policy, weakening its commitment to Europe.
Meanwhile, the National Intelligence Service also confirmed Wednesday evening that North Korean troops deployed to Russia are, quote, assessed to be already engaged in combat. It added that these forces moved to the Kursk region over the past 2 weeks. 김정실, 아리랑 뉴스.
Out of the war in Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is expanding its offensive, launching a record 145 drones in just one day. Glide bombs, in addition to drones, and a ballistic missile were also launched into Ukraine, killing at least 6 civilians, injuring about 30 more. Meanwhile, Russia is massing 50,000 troops. That includes North Korean soldiers for what looks to be a new offensive in Kursk. That's that region in Russia that has been partially occupied by Ukrainians. Ukrainian intelligence tells ABC News that this video right here, it shows North Korean soldiers in Russia. ABC's Patrick Reevell joins us now with more. So, Patrick, what's the latest on the battlefield?
Hi, Terry. Yeah, I mean, the latest on the battlefield is mainly very worrying signs for Ukraine. As you say, there are 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops now said to be massed in the Kursk region. Of them, it's estimated that there could be as many as 10,000 North Korean troops, all there to basically take part in a counteroffensive to try and push back Ukrainian forces that managed to seize a foothold in the Kursk region back in August. And as you know, as we understand it from what we can assess, Russia has already, over the last couple of months, been able to take back about half of what the Ukrainians had managed to seize back in August. But so far, the Ukrainians had been holding them. There's an expectation now that Russia will attempt a bigger offensive to try and remove them. But it's not just in Kursk. Also in eastern Ukraine, we're seeing Ukrainian forces under severe pressure at multiple points, in particular around the town of Kharkiv, where there is now the risk that a large number of Ukrainian troops could find themselves surrounded. There's a risk there that the lines could crumble if the Russians manage to capture that town, which would be a very serious blow to Ukrainian forces in eastern Ukraine. But just in general, we're seeing that Ukrainian troops are under severe pressure at multiple points, and we hear from them that they are suffering in particular from shortages of manpower, and that they are very, very worried about the general direction of the war at the moment, Terry.
Yeah, let me pick up on that, Patrick. Manpower. So this is 1,000 days into this war now. We remember it beginning with Russia's attempt at lightning strike into that country that would topple the government and give the entirety of Ukraine to the Kremlin. That didn't happen. It settled into this grinding, awful conflict. And now Donald Trump is back in office saying he's going to end it. What's the mood in Ukraine? What's it look like for them going forward?
You know, I think that's a fascinating question, because I think many people might be surprised to hear that within Ukraine, a very large number of people believe that Donald Trump's election is potentially a good thing for Ukraine, and they prefer it to if there had been a Kamala Harris victory. And the reason for that, I think, is the deep disillusionment that there is in Ukraine about the Biden administration's policy over the last year, really, where they were imposing quite significant restrictions on how Western weapons could be used. And basically, many Ukrainians, and we hear this from some senior Ukrainian military commanders, many Ukrainians feel that essentially the Biden administration was giving Ukraine enough to be on life support, but not enough to win and not enough to force Russia into fair negotiations. And so what they're hoping is that Donald Trump potentially can create a situation where at least there's an opportunity now for negotiations. They know that there's a risk as well that he said he's going to cut aid. They were very concerned about that, but they hope that this at least creates an opportunity for them to try and have negotiations, Terry.
Wow. That is remarkable that the Ukrainians, he talks tough on Ukraine, but the Biden administration has kind of played it very, very carefully, too carefully, it sounds, for them. Patrick Reevell, I know you've been following this since the beginning. Thanks very much.
ما انتظار داریم که وعده صادق 3 یک اتفاقی را رقم بزنه و شاهدش باشیم که بر این تعجب‌های صادق 1 و 2 ما بیفزاید، به گونه‌ای که دشمن دیگه حواسش جمع کنه، بگه حریف این ایرانی‌ها اینا نمیشه.
خودم احساس غرور کردم از اینکه تونستیم اینقدر قدرت دفاعی رو ببریم بالا که تو مخیله این تجاوزگرا این فکر پیش نیاد که بتونن به حمله کنن.
اگر پاسخ طرف داده نشود طرف جری‌تر خواهد شد. پس ما از مسئولین میخوایم که به قدرت و همچنین با توکل بر خدا به سخت‌ترین شکل و محکم‌ترین شکل پاسخ به کسانی که به خاک ایران تعرض کردن من جمله اسرائیل غاصب انجام بدن و از این موضع خودشون به هیچ عنوان کوتاه نیایند.
ما انتظار داریم که وعده صادق 3 یک اتفاقی را رقم بزنه و شاهدش باشیم که بر این تعجب‌های صادق 1 و 2 ما بیفزاید، به گونه‌ای که دشمن دیگه حواسش جمع کنه، بگه حریف این ایرانی‌ها اینا نمیشه.